All right, you ready?
Yeah.
All right, guys. Kalamazi's ordering Taco Bell. Does anybody want anything?
Yeah, I already put my order in. Don't worry.
Yeah, brother.
I'm getting a Crunchwrap Supreme and
Oh
a
my,
chicken
me too.
quesadilla.
I'm getting Crunchwrap too. You're not getting anything. You're going to bed right after we record this. Stop lying.
Dude, okay, don't break it. Don't break the bit. Anyways, all right. So
It's not a bit, man. I'm reporting the truth. That's what I do in these videos. You just make stuff up. But speaking of making stuff up, we both thought Broodtwister would be pretty easy. Turns out it wasn't. Yesterday, I thought as well there was a decent chance that it was going to die for Echo on their second day. No, it came nowhere close.
All right, I got something to get put in post. Put in post my prediction from yesterday,
Okay.
where I predicted that Liquid was going to kill Broodtwisters at some point during their day, and Echo was not going to kill the Broodtwister at all, and then that happened.
Yeah, so I'm not going to not edit that in because I don't want to. It's because I don't care to, right? It's not like I'm trying to slight you. It's that there was, even if it was really favorable for me, I'm not going to go and find the footage from yesterday and put it in these videos.
I know.
It's not happening. Here's the extent of editing that happens for these videos is I cut the first little bit off after we've hit start recording, but before we start the episode, and I cut the bit at the end off after we've stopped the episode.
Let's be on task.
All right, come on, focus up.
So Liquid killed Broodtwister. They ended up taking like 115 pulls. They actually changed their comp an awful lot.
Yeah, in fact, a yoink from Method came out. I think was the story here. Which, yeah, here we've got the comps, and I believe it was Method that were on the double DK first on the tank side of things.
Scroll down a little bit.
Yeah, of course. There's what they were up to, and Liquid ended up yoinking that for their kill comp for this boss.
And then if you go and you look at actually Echo's composition, I mean, we can just like skip
Yeah,
that.
so this is Liquid's, but let's take a look at Echo's now as they were working on. So here's the thing: as we're recording this right now, Echo are doing M+, but this was the comp they were using on their day 2.
Echo, and this is actually
or quadruple Frosty K, but still on that triple tank life.
Echo, and this is actually really bad for them, is that they're actually still doing heroic splits because they didn't finish their gearing process and they have to gear new characters in some capacity.
Yeah, I mean, this happened for Liquid today. Woke up and they came in and they did some normal splits, which they hadn't been expecting to need to do, and M+ to gear some characters that, you know, I think this tier has required some characters that nobody was really expecting. For Echo, you know, all these extra Frost DKs and Fury Warriors and stuff, you know, people knew these specs would be good, and Echoes are geared, but you can see a bunch of 618, 619s on their Frost DKs. If they want to swap to Blood DK, which I'm not sure if that's what they're up to right now, that's something I'm not 100% sure what their plan is for today, for their day 3. It is an expensive thing to do, and Liquid had to do that as well on their day 3 was, you know, prep the double DK that they ended up using on this fight.
It was pretty interesting because we saw a graphic earlier whenever you and I were casting, and Liquid was ahead of both Echo and Method at every single pull count on Broodtwister.
I know the graphic. I'll see if I can look it up.
Yeah, it was from Raider.io.
Yeah.
They were basically ahead at every single point on that boss, which we were kind of questioning as to whether or not, because there's this thing where Liquid, you know, they give up the strat, then everybody kind of plays catch up, but the fact that they were still progging Broodtwister from ahead the entire time, that was actually very surprising to me compared to some of the rest of the competition. And, you know, I think that really bodes well for Liquid's chances moving forward. Now, I mean, what else? Do you have anything to say about Broodtwister just in general? I mean, beyond that, I think that was a very impressive kill. It ended up taking a ton of pulls. What do you think is going to happen with Echo and Method trying to play catch up here?
Yeah, I mean, so I think there is. When I was watching Liquid pull this boss, there were a decent chunk of wipes that I would say were, you know, it looked bad, right? Like you see an egg not getting broken being kind of a common story of the wipes. And my gut reaction on watching that was like, okay, this is messy, right? This is sloppy. This is something that means that they are taking more pulls than they need to on this fight. But like you said, when you actually, which I wasn't able to find the way to actually pull this graphic up, but we had a graphic overlaid of the three guilds progression by pull count, and Liquid were better at every pull count, right? Like their 30th pull was better than Echoes, was better than Methods, right? Their 50th pull was better than Echoes on this boss as well. So that makes me think that level of sloppiness, and having now pulled Broodtwister myself, for a while I was doing world first progression on Broodtwister, not a big deal earlier today, and then Liquid killed it. So now we're doing world second progression on Broodtwister. But either way, when you actually pull that boss, there's 20 people in your raid, and every time there's egg breaks happening, 8 people have a really important egg break job. 3 people have like giga important knock jobs. 3 people have important like stun and CC and mass grip jobs. 10 people have important kicks on worms.
2 tanks are
Two
fighting
tanks
for their
have
lives.
vitally important. Well, so 2 tanks have many very important jobs of taunting and living. And that is, there's multiple things they have to taunt and multiple things they have to live against.
Yeah.
And also, those are people involved in gripping and CCing the ads. Everybody has a responsibility there as well to navigate the web debuff that might be going out and either be involved in dispelling it or moving for it. So basically, you have like 80 high precision jobs that are being distributed somewhat unevenly among 20 raiders every 30 seconds in that fight. And so that means that when you wipe, it often looks like, oh, somebody screwed something up, right? Like, that was sloppy. Which is because that's like when that same thing happens on Heroic, that's what it means. But on Mythic, no, I think that Liquid's pull count on this was good, not bad. Now, yesterday I was like, okay, this, their progression on this has been either fine or bad, depending on whether Echo are able to do better. Now I'm pretty sure that a good case for Echo would be if they can match Liquid's progression on this, do slightly better.
I'm concerned that they're not going to be able to match it. Like, that's the worry, especially whenever you see those graphics where they were doing worse at earlier points.
Yeah, the good news for Echo is that now they can potentially switch to like double blood decay if they want to. Many pulls before where Liquid did. Double blood decay looked really good on that fight and let you drop down to just 2 tanks instead of 3 and get all those mass grips and also just have a tank that can live everything much more easily.
You say that's good news, but the bad news is that they have to completely pivot their comp in the same way that we saw Liquid having to pivot their comp today, where they're pivoting out of the 3 tanks, which was the strategy that you would prepared and planned the entire time, and then you have to figure out a way to get Mark the Wild back in the composition.
Yeah.
Like, there's a bunch of moving pieces, right? Because then it's like, now you have to find the Windwalker Monk as well, because we need the Mystic Touch buff, because Mystic Touch is probably the most important buff for this fight, actually, which is not normally true, but it is in this case, because all of your melee are doing the most amount of your damage.
It is a wild fight. I mean, we saw a balanced druid entering the raid.
It was so bad.
If you'd asked us what is the least likely spec to see brought into a raid going into Nerebar Palace, I think there's a decent chunk of people that would have answered balanced druid.
I probably would have said Fire Mage.
Fire Mage is another answer that is not a bad answer. I think Shadow Priest is probably the best answer, actually.
Yeah.
Looking at things now, would have been the strongest guess. But here's the thing: is like every spec is being played. Even Fire Mage, my guild's playing Fire Mage.
Every spec was I think brought in at some point.
Or being considered. It's crazy actually how much this tier is.
You very rarely optimize your comp for the 5th of a boss.
That's the thing, is usually there is a best comp for a 5th boss, but you
never
don't have to play it,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Because it's the 5th boss, right? It's like Larodar. If you think about a boss like Larodar last year, is there a hypothetical best comp that makes that fight the easiest possible?
Yes.
Yes, but you don't need it because you can kill that boss with mistakes and with suboptimal compositions. Week 1 Broodtwister Ovinax, nowhere close to that being true. Like, you need very close to optimized gear, damage, and execution to kill this boss, which is bizarre for a 5th boss, but very cool for the race. Do they need to nerf this boss on the next reset? I suspect they do, because I already know of several relatively casual guilds, like we're talking about non-Hall of Fame guilds even, cutting-edge guilds out there.
This guy's guild is on that boss.
Guilds with some very suspicious Warlock players that are on Broodtwister, What are they going to do for the rest of their raid days? This reset, bash their heads against Broodtwister.
So here's the issue: is we're nowhere near gear cap. So in theory, both Broodtwister and Nexus Princess are going to get a lot easier once you have gear. But the problem is, like, getting that myth track gear is a grind, right? Where you're not going to be able to get a bunch of myth track gear until week 5, week 6, week 7. But the first 4 bosses of Mythic are easy even at like 615 item level, whereas you're going to need 635 for Broodtwister, 635 for Nexus Princess. And so then I think that Blizzard's probably going to end up hotfix nerfing Nexus Princess is my theory.
You think before it gets world firsted, it's getting nerfed?
I wouldn't be shocked if tomorrow we see a hotfix nerf on the boss HP, because that damage check seems more real than the Broodtwister one.
It is harder than Broodtwister's damage check.
Which the Broodtwister one was a very real check.
Yeah, the Broodtwister one had this tension of like boss damage versus ad damage, whereas this one is literally just raw single target, which I think is always really fun when that type of check is tight. But I also am not confident that it's doable. I mean, I think it's doable. I don't think it needs to be nerfed for
the problem is the part of the raid that it's in, and how easy the earlier bosses are.
Yes, I agree with you that these bosses should be nerfed, but I don't think they should be nerfed for Race to World first. I think they should be nerfed on the weekly reset.
Okay.
For the guilds that have won, or not one shot, but have killed up to Rashanan in under 10 pulls per boss, right? Because for an example of the difficulty curve
I think that's
here,
a valid criticism, by the way.
you look at Liquid's pull counts, it's 1, 1, 1, 1, 120.
Yes.
That is, and obviously the difficulty curve isn't quite that steep, right? Like Rashanan is a little bit harder than 1 for a lot of guilds.
But for Pop-Tart Corn Dog, it would be like 1, 3.
It was actually
3.
It was 2. We had a little Ulgrax incident, and we almost had another one. We killed it in Berserk on our second
Okay, so
pull.
2.
2. It was like 2, 3, 4, 8 or something.
2, 3, 4, 8.
7 zillion.
325.
It's a number that you know. The question is how much we pull at this reset. We usually add an extra day during the first reset. I think we're taking that day back off because we don't think there's much of a point in spending too much time.
Go do Mythic Plus.
Yeah, exactly. We'll go do some keys, find some avoidance gear or something like that. Go do Time Walking Black Temple and kill.
Is that good?
There's a hero track piece of gear from killing Illidan.
Okay, I gotta do that.
It's decent. You know, it's hero track. There's some stats that you can get that you can't get in other War Within sources.
It could be good.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's not particularly good, but what else are you doing? Are you pulling Broodtwister Ovinax with, 1 Frost DK, 2 Fury Warriors, and a Dream? That's our other option.
Okay, so moving on to Nexus Princess. How do you feel about geometry? Were you good at math in school?
I was good at math in school, yeah. Despite my best efforts, I was okay at it, yeah.
I was pretty good at math in school as well. And Nexus Princess, I would describe it as very difficult to see the vision as to what shape you're supposed to make with all these portals.
It's pretty cool, yeah. The whole idea is that as long as the shape you're making is like symmetrical, then you're just good. You don't get
yeah. So what the mythic mechanic of the fight is you're gonna have to dash players like through the middle of the boss occasionally, right? So these assassins have like this mask and like they're glowing red a little bit, and so then you have to dash them through the boss. Let's see if we can actually get a POV of what this kind of fight looks like. There we go. And so basically they've been drawing a bunch of different shapes with these portals, trying to make sure, because like you were saying, they just need to be evenly distributed as to when they're pulling the players. And so
this pull isn't even what they usually were doing here. Yeah, I remember this pull. I can find some of the ones where what they most recently were doing can be demonstrated. So let's see. Yeah, okay, this coming up soon is their progression pull right now. I believe it's this one potentially. So yeah, the start of the fight comes out, and you place them on just a bunch of world markers, right?
Yeah.
And then the first charge comes through. So what's happening here is 3 of these 5 have masks on them. This one, and this one. And during this fight, they needs to come through the boss. So what they do in this phase is they make a line of markers, and these ones charge through the boss, and the others go a little bit out, and then they come back in on the next charge.
So there's also a weird dynamic where you can only charge at most 2 at a time, because if you charge 3 at a time, then the boss does 150% damage, which is unhealable damage, basically.
Yeah, so actually this may be... Yeah, okay, so and then they dash some back in, and we get a little, like, box thing. But they've been moving the shape a little bit.
So there's a portal that's weird that's outside of the...
It's far, but there's one that's far in the other direction as well.
Yeah.
So that makes it okay, right? But so you kind of have 4 that are close, and then you have 1 far up top, 1 far up at the bottom, and that means you're not getting gripped into anything.
The downside, though, is like what happens if your melee gets those far ones.
They don't. I think these things only target ranged largely, or mostly target range. Yeah. I in fact, I think they maybe only target range if there's enough of them around.
Dude, melee privilege. What the heck is this? Anyways.
Yeah. It's a really cool fight, though. The way that this fight looks is phenomenal. And one of the cool things about their strat is that it scales into the later phases, because the way it works is that you get 2, then 3, then 3, then 4, then 5 masks.
Exactly.
But the way that they're dashing it is they're just dashing 2 through the boss, and then they're dashing the other 3 through the boss. And as long as you pick the right 2 to dash through the first time, this will scale into any number of masks and will work.
But okay, so for the last phase, like I talked about at the end, where whenever you dash 3 through the boss, you get the 150% damage amp.
It's not good.
You have to do it.
At the end of the phase.
Exactly. You have to do it in the last phase, because all 5 masks are empowered, and if you actually don't have one of the masks taken off the ads, you get hit for 20 million damage, basically an unhealable amount, unless you have AMS up, which in that case you could maybe live, but.
Yeah, even then, I'm not liking the chances there. So, yeah, I mean, the end of this fight is a question mark, but getting at least basically, if Liquid can get P1 done cleanly, they can get P2 done cleanly, and they can probably get P3 done cleanly, depending on what that exact triple mask thing actually feels like at the end.
Okay, so let's talk about the next 24 hours.
Yeah,
Liquid's gonna end up progging Nexus Princess with. I would describe it as varied amounts of success. I actually don't think that Nexus
You don't think they'll kill it
Princess...
tomorrow? I kind of think that it's a boss where it's either killable or not killable, and we'll find out tomorrow. Like, if they don't kill it tomorrow, it's because it is the kind of damage check that is like end boss levels or penultimate boss levels of historic damage check.
I don't know. Whenever Max went on that interview with you guys at the very end and was like, "Oh, it's a very real damage check, more real than Broodtwister," that
it is a clean 8 billy.
That
bit of hell.
That concerns me. And dude, THD gave me some numbers on it. And he said that he thinks that it's like 1.35 million average needed across your entire raid. Which most classes at 639 item level only sim like 1.45. So nobody's simming that at 1.6.
Yeah, although a lot of the sims are 5 minutes. They're not, Spy Master's webbing at 7 minutes like you could. And
well, Spy Master's web caps out at 4.
Okay, yeah, okay. So it's not great,
I don't know. I think it's going to be a very close fight. I'm not convinced that it's necessarily doable yet, but I don't want to say it's like impossible damage check because it seems like these race roll first guilds always find a way.
I think they will find a way. I mark me down as this boss is dead this time tomorrow.
All right, you know what? You've convinced me.
Oh my god, the Taco Bell is here. Thank you, Kalamazi.
Okay, so we got to wrap this up. All
That's
right,
it.
So next 24 hours from Echo, I think that Echo's probably going to end up downing Broodtwister. I think that they are, but I guess I'm not convinced.
Yeah, I think Echo will kill Broodtwister in the next 24 hours. I think they'll kill it in the next 12 hours at the time of this thing coming up. Yeah,
I could buy that.
All right, we'll check back in with those predictions, and I'm gonna eat my burrito.
All right, goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Oh, hell yeah.
That is the greatest outro I've ever seen. Kalamazi eats Doritos, Locos, Tacos in the back.